Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Iggy's Toy Parade and Soldier Review. Once again, this is your host, Iggy, and today we are going to talk about something that is somewhat of a departure from the Civil War by about 300 years, and that's classic Star Trek, brought to us by Gene Roddenberry in 1966. And this is the what we consider now the classic crew because they introduced Star Trek again in 1987 as the next generation with a whole new crew and cast of characters. However, today we're going to talk about the original crew. Now, this collection that you see here was produced by Playmates Toys. Playmates Toys was established in 1966 by a man called Sam Chan Tai Ho. I like that name, Sam Chan Tai Ho. That's kind of a cool name. Sounds like he should have a rock band playing a song called Wooly Bully. Instead of Sam and the Pharaohs, it's Sam Chan and the Tai Ho. Tai Ho, Tai Ho, Tai Ho, Tai Ho. It's off to work we go. Anyway, Iggy gets distracted, as we all know. Playmates gained quite a bit of notoriety when they began producing toys for a movie released in 1989 called Mutant Teenage Ninja Turtles. Is that it? Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. It's something like that. I may have the order mixed up, but the movie was a hit with the kids, and the figures were produced for kids. And when I say produced for kids, because of their shape, well, I guess it was okay for collectors too. That becomes different when they come out. They made a deal with Paramount Television to release the next generation figures, and they came out produced for kids and then later for collectors. And what's the distinction between the two? Well, one is kind of thick and childish looking. I don't know how else to say it. And then they start producing figures that were more realistic. And these that you see before you are figures that look more proportionate. So who are we looking at? By the way, this playset was made in 1999 for the 25th anniversary of Star Trek, the original series. The original series, by the way, lasted from 1966 to 1969. I don't recall watching it in 66, 67, but I do remember staying up late at night on a Friday to watch the original series. So I was, I guess, signed on board with the third series. It went into not re-release, redistribution. I can't think of what I'm saying now, guys. Anyway, what do they call it when a series is brought out again? I swear to God, my brain, you know what happens? I don't know how to say it, camera shy. And it's hard for me to talk because I become self-aware of what I'm saying. And I have great respect for actors and news presenters because of that. I realize now how difficult it is. So let's begin with Captain Kirk. Captain James Tiberius Kirk of the Starship Enterprise. was played by William Shatner, a Canadian actor, born in 1931. He's now, what, 92 years of age? He's the oldest man to ever go into space at the age of 90. William Shatner had quite a career before he joined the crew of the Enterprise in 1966. And oddly enough, he had worked with Leonard Nimoy on a TV show 2 years prior to this, and that was The Man from U.N.C.L.E. And I think it was called The Strigas Affair. And Nimoy played not a Russian, but a Russian-like villain from a fictitious Eastern European country, I guess. And they did things like that because they didn't want to offend the Soviets during the Cold War. So they would make up fictitious countries, like the Republic of Bulgaria or People's Republic of Bulgaria or something along those lines. And the country of Bangabongo, things like that. And he played the sort of the good guy that Napoleon Solo and Ilya Kuryakin recruited to fool the Thresh agents who were trying to steal the Strigas formula. And Strigas, of course, was not a real thing, but something that the agents from U.N.C.L.E. came up with. And William Shatner was also in other television programs like The Twilight Zone and One Step Beyond. And, you know what? One show that he was in that stays in my memory for some reason is he played a officer in Judgment at Nuremberg, starring Spencer Tracy. And I think Marlene Dietrich was in that also. I always thought Marlene Dietrich was creepy looking. But, that's just my opinion. My opinion doesn't matter that much when it comes to matters of beauty, I guess. William Shatner wrote a book called My Movie Memories. He wrote several books concerning Star Trek. And he also wrote books called Tech Wars, and he directed Star Trek V. He was in T.J. Hooker, I guess, for 4 years or something like that. He was in one of the Airplane movies. So, I mean, he's had a long and varied career. He was on stage at a Star Trek convention, and I got to see DeForest Kelley, which you can see up here somewhat. He's in the shadow, isn't he? Can you see him? He's being shadowed there. And also Leonard Nimoy. I've heard Leonard's name pronounced Nimoy and Nimoy. So which one it is, I'm not sure. I always called him Nimoy. I saw Leonard Nimoy in a production of Sherlock Holmes in 1976, I think it was. And I remember when I walked in with my girlfriend, everyone was staring at us because my girlfriend was pretty hot and I was wearing a suit that didn't fit. So it's really looked terrible on me. And it was a cheap suit that I bought for $20. And I was walking around like I was some celebrity or something. Anyway, I think that was at the Schubert Theater in 1976. But Robin was pretty hot, so she did get some attention. Anyway, DeForest Kelley came out first. Can you see him back there? That's a little better. That's one of the difficulties of when you're filming with with plastic, is it reflects all the light, and also because this item has been in storage for 20 years, 24 years, something to that effect, it's scratched. And so it gets that sort of a milky appearance or cloudy looking. Um, so that's also the difficulty when filming this. So DeForest Kelley comes out, and then he comes out and he says, "Hi, I want to introduce you to a friend of mine. He's a writer, a producer, a director, a singer." And he keeps going. As he's saying this, William Shatner comes out onto the stage from the left side. And at the same time, Leonard Nimoy came out on the right side, and they both walk up to each other and they go, "What are you doing here?" And everyone was cheering. It was a really great moment. Everyone was really happy to see these three together. Now, I've been to, I don't know, I guess I'd been to like 7 or 8 Star Trek conventions and saw many cast members, but that was the first time I saw any of the original members up on stage together. Prior to that, I went to a reading by, um, not Picard, what's his name? Patrick Stewart. And he read Shakespeare. And he talked a little bit about Star Trek, and he did quote one line from Star Trek, which was, "Make it so, number one," and everyone cheered. Uh, I had seen William Shatner at the Hollywood Bowl in 1977. I think in November of 1977, when the Los Angeles Philharmonic did a Star Wars concert, plus other uh, science fiction music, such as the theme to Star Trek and other things. And before they started, Shatner gave a reading and he read a poem about whales, and they played whale sounds, but he also spoke a little bit about Star Trek. Now, the only cast member I've ever actually met in person was James Doohan, or Jimmy Doohan. Can you see him there in the back? Who played Montgomery Scott, Chief Engineer Montgomery Scott. Is reflecting the light there. That's a little better. I'm not happy with that, but that's the best I can do for you. And I was at a department store with my mom, and this was about 2 years after Star Trek had gone off the air. So I was either 14 or 15 years old, something like that. And I was standing there, bored out of my skull. My mom was shopping for clearance clothes or something. She was very involved in that. And I was looking around, bored. And someone bumped into me. And I turned around and I was inches away from, you guessed it, James Doohan. And he was probably bored to be at the department store too with his wife. And he said, "Oh, I'm sorry." And by the way, he doesn't talk like Scotty. James Doohan was a Canadian. He spent, I think, 9 years in the Canadian. They said in his bio there was a Canadian Army, but I know he was a Royal Canadian Air Force pilot and actually flew missions on D-Day. So I think he was also wounded. Probably shrapnel or something to that effect. You know, we don't often think of pilots being wounded by shrapnel from the ground, but that actually happens quite a bit. And I talked to a Tuskegee airman 20 years ago. He's probably passed on now. He was in a wheelchair, and he said he was shot in the foot. And he laughed about it. He says the only Air Force guy to be shot in the foot. He was a lot of fun to talk to, very funny guy. I saw him at a Civil War reenactment of all things. in Huntington Beach, California. So Leonard Nimoy was actually the same age as William Shatner, and of course he has passed away now. And that felt strange when an iconic figure from your youth and actually from most of your life passes away. It feels, I don't know, like you feel a little emptier, I suppose. And next up on the deck here, is Walter Koenig, who played Ensign Chekhov, a Russian, which was strange because Walter Koenig is a German name, but he played a Russian, and you can't see him because the light is very irritating how it reflects off the plastic. I get really kind of upset when I'm looking at something I want to buy on eBay and all the photographs, you can't see what it is because the light reflected off of the bubble blister card or whatever it was. This is Nichelle Nichols, and rumor has it that she wanted to quit the show and was talked out of it by a letter from Martin Luther King saying that she was an inspiration to young African Americans, and so she kept with the show. She was getting bored because she didn't have much to do on the show other than to um, say things like all channels are open or all frequencies are open, and things like that. So she got a little bored with that. I remember the episode where she kisses Kirk. Remember that episode where these people kind of fancied themselves to be like Greek gods because they had all these telekinetic powers, and they forced her and Kirk to kiss, and that was very taboo in the 1960s. And that's DeForest Kelly. Now, you may have seen DeForest Kelly before you saw Star Trek because he was in a lot of Westerns. One that comes to mind right away is Gunfight at the OK Corral, although he doesn't have a very big role in that film. And if you're not careful, you could miss him. And he played one of the Earp brothers. And the movie had nothing to do with the actual shootout. I mean, they used the names of the characters, and that's it. It had nothing else to do with the actual shootout at the OK Corral. Um, in the movie, they look like they're on a ranch, and there's like a creek with a bridge that goes over it, and there's burning wagons, and there's all this other stuff going on. And I went to Tucson. Well, not far from Tucson is Tombstone, so I went there and went to where the shootout took place. And it's like an alley now. The actual OK Corral is gone, and nearby where it used to be, they set up a fake one to put on cheesy gun fight battles. The actual gunfight lasted, what, 30 seconds or something? They have a very good display at the Gene Autry Western Museum of the gunfight, and they have them a recording, and they have them saying what the actual participants, what's that? Participants. Participates is what you use with paint by the numbers. No, not really. Uh, so they have them saying that, and they have them all positioned where they were relative to each other at the actual gunfight. So that was pretty cool. But anyway, he was in that movie with who was in that? Not Charlton Heston, Burt Lancaster, and Kirk Douglas. And Kirk Douglas is one of my all-time favorite. That guy was an amazing athlete. Did you ever see, was it called The Vikings? The one where he runs across all the oars that are sticking out from the ship? And he was the only one that was able to do it. And he actually did it. He was incredible the way he would leap onto horses. Like if you saw the war wagon, he just walks up to a horse and without a springboard or anything, he leaps up onto it. And I just can't believe that. It was unbelievable. Anyway, I met Burt Lancaster in an elevator and I looked at him, he looked at me, and I nodded. I didn't want to say anything because I thought, you're not supposed to really talk to people in an elevator. It's like an unwritten law. It's like when you go to the men's room and you take out your Roscoe Johnson or whatever you call yours, and some guy tries to talk to you. You like turn to the side with your hips because you don't want some guy looking at uh, your thingy, your dingus. Well, it's kind of that rule about elevators that you just don't speak to each other. So I looked at him, he looked at me, and I nodded, and I got off at the next floor, and that was it. That's my encounter with Burt Lancaster. Okay, now I had talked a little bit about um, James. Oh, shoot, come on, Rich. James Doohan. And he was also in an episode of The Man from Uncle. The Man from Uncle, for the 1960s, that was a really cool show. I really liked it. When I was a kid, I used to play, well, we called it playing Man from Uncle. We would all put on black turtlenecks and run around the neighborhood at night with flashlights during the summer. And basically, we were playing tag, I guess. And this is Sulu. Was it Ensign Sulu or Lieutenant Sulu? Ensign Sulu. And he's played by George Takei. George Takei was actually put into a Japanese internment camp during World War II. And I went to the Japanese American Museum in Los Angeles, and it was very interesting. They had mock ups of the barracks, which were very primitive. They had no insulation or walls. They were just, clapboard put up onto 2x4s with nothing else. And it could get very cold out in the desert where they put the camp. But the Japanese Americans made the best of it, and they put on plays, and they had the kids in the Boy Scouts, and they played baseball. And a large number of them petitioned the government to serve in the military, and they formed the 442nd, and they served in Italy and was a very highly decorated division. George Takei had an unusual speaking voice. He's like, "Hello, I'm George Takei." And you won't forget it if you ever hear it. He's been in other things, just like Walter Koenig was in Babylon 5. And Sulu, or George Takei played the father to a character in one of those TV shows that was kind of like the characters were kind of like X-Men. It wasn't X-Men, but it was a show kind of similar where they had superpowers. Anyway, so they've had other work. Of course, all of them were in the Star Trek movies, and they made 6 of those. And my favorite ones were 2, 4, and 6 of that. It's odd that it's all even, that the ones I liked, 2, 4, and 6. Okay, guys, let's take a look at the package. I think I mentioned to you that it was made by Playmates, by who starred a company started by Sam Chan, Tai Ho, and I got distracted. Oh, look, you can see them better now. Let's do it this way too, so you can see these characters better. Well, can you? No. Scott is still in the shadows. I'm sorry about that lighting situation. Here's, of course, is the original crew. Now, this picture is like famous because it's been on trading cards, it's been on calendars, T-shirts. So this is a very famous. Look how thin he was. He later got pretty puffy. I'm not judging, guys, because that's what happened to Iggy. Iggy was that thin, and then when I was 44, I started to get heavy, and I've pretty much stayed heavy ever since then. So here's the packaging. It almost looks like the packaging that they used for next generation items. They also released these things down here, the phaser and communicator. I've shown you those in a previous video. I must have been, about 160 videos ago. I'm not sure. I have 195 videos. Can you believe that? This is episode 196. So let's take some more. Okay, you've seen this. This supposedly is a limited edition, and I'm not sure what number I've got, but I'm sure it doesn't really matter. It was just a gimmick to get people to buy these kinds of things. Okay, I have number 53,382 out of 150,000. So they made 97,000 more of these than what I've got. So being limited edition is not really meaningful in this case. Okay, guys, that's all I got. This has been somewhat of a departure of what you've recently gotten used to. I am going to show some more Star Trek things because I have the Next Generation bridge playset, the engineering room, and the transporter. The transporter I'm eager to show to you. I hope the batteries are working because it's really clever how they do it. You put the figure in the transporter, you turn a dial, and you see beep, and then the figure disappears. It's really cool. So I can't wait to show that to you. So that's all I've got for you this time. I want to thank you for coming along. For those of you who've recently joined the Iggy Army, and to all the old timers out there, I want to say thank you for, well, look at that. That's a better picture. I want to thank you for hanging in there. And all of you guys, you just got Iggy with it. Thank you. Space, the final frontier. These are the voyages of the Starship Enterprise. Its 5-year mission to seek out new civilizations. And I think I just blew it, so I better say, and to boldly go where no man has gone before. Anyway, that's it. That's all I got. So I'm just going to say bye.